Have you noticed how it's possible to be surrounded by people, voices overlapping, laughter bouncing off the walls, music playing softly in the background, and still feel completely alone? Not physically alone, not socially excluded, just invisible. There's a type of moment that feels almost surreal. You're sitting at a table with friends. Everyone's talking. Someone is telling a story. Someone else is reacting loudly. And somehow, you're there, but not really there. You nod. You smile at the right times. You even add a comment or two. But internally, there's distance. It's like watching life through glass. Or maybe it happens at work. A meeting room filled with voices. Chairs scraping the floor. Ideas bouncing back and forth. You contribute something thoughtful. It's acknowledged. Then the conversation moves on. And something in you sinks. Not because anyone rejected you. Not because anyone was cruel. But because nothing landed. No one really saw you. Or maybe it's more subtle. A family gathering. Everyone's scrolling their phones between conversations. You sit there, thinking of something real to say, but the moment never feels right. So you swallow it. Again, this feeling isn't about the number of people around you. It's about something deeper. Loneliness in a crowd isn't about isolation. It's about disconnection. And disconnection is rarely random. There's usually a mechanism underneath it. The human nervous system is wired for safety before it's wired for closeness. When the environment feels unpredictable, even subtly, the system doesn't relax into presence. It shifts into observation. Instead of participating fully, it monitors. It reads faces, tracks tone shifts, measures reactions. It becomes strategic. Some people learned early that being fully expressive was risky. Maybe emotions weren't received well. Maybe vulnerability was ignored. Maybe speaking up led to embarrassment, dismissal, or tension. So the system adapted. It decided, better to stay slightly withdrawn, better to reveal in small doses, better to observe first. Over time, that adaptation becomes automatic. In a group setting, instead of sinking into the moment, there's subtle scanning. Who has influence here? What's the mood? How much space is safe to take? That constant internal calibration creates distance. And distance, even when invisible, feels like loneliness. There's another layer to it. Humans connect through emotional mirroring. Eye contact, tone alignment, shared emotional rhythm. When someone is internally guarded, even slightly, that rhythm weakens. The body may be present, but the emotional signal is muted. And people unconsciously respond to that, not with rejection, but with surface-level engagement, which reinforces the feeling of being unseen. It becomes a quiet loop. Guard a little. Feel unseen. Guard more. Some people experience this most intensely when conversations stay shallow. Weather, trends, small talk. There's a hunger for depth, for something real. But initiating depth feels like stepping onto unstable ground. So they wait. And waiting becomes silence. In adulthood, this pattern shows up in subtle ways. You might be the calm one in the group, the observer, the one who listens more than speaks. People describe you as independent, strong, self-contained. But inside, there's a quiet question. Why does connection feel so rare? In relationships, this can turn into emotional self-reliance. You handle your own feelings. You process internally. You don't want to burden anyone. But then there's resentment when others don't instinctively understand you. At work, it can look like competence without visibility. You perform well. You contribute intelligently. But you rarely self-promote, rarely reveal the full range of your thinking. So recognition stays limited. In friendships, it can show up as being everyone's safe space, but not having one of your own. And in social settings, it becomes that familiar sensation. Present, but peripheral. There's power in this pattern. Observation builds insight. Emotional restraint builds control. Self-reliance builds resilience. When you're not desperate for attention, you see dynamics clearly. You notice who seeks validation, who dominates, who masks insecurity with volume. That clarity is strategic. People who can sit quietly in a room and read it accurately hold a subtle advantage. They're rarely impulsive. rarely exposed. But every strategy has a cost. If connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels unsafe, then loneliness becomes the price of protection. Not because others don't care, but because access is restricted. Sometimes the loneliness isn't about other people at all. It's about the version of yourself that never enters the room. The thoughts you didn't voice, the humor you filtered, the emotion you compressed. When authenticity is rationed, connection becomes thin, and thin connection feels like absence. There's also a cultural layer. Modern social environments reward performance, quick wit, confident projection, visible charisma. If your nervous system values depth over display, those environments can feel overstimulating. So you withdraw further. Not dramatically, just slightly. And slight withdrawal over time becomes identity. I'm just quiet. I'm not a people person. I prefer being alone. Some of that may be true, but some of it may be adaptation. Loneliness in a crowd is often the nervous system saying, I don't feel safe enough to be real here. And sometimes it's saying, I've forgotten how. The interesting part is this. The same sensitivity that creates loneliness is the same sensitivity that makes deep connection possible. Because you notice nuance, you feel shifts, you detect what others miss. When that awareness is combined with small, deliberate openness, connection changes. Not dramatic oversharing, not forced extroversion, just slightly more signal, slightly longer eye contact, slightly more honest responses, slightly less filtering. Instead of answering, I'm good, maybe it becomes, it's been a heavy week actually. Instead of nodding silently, maybe it's adding one genuine opinion, even if it disrupts smoothness. Connection isn't built through perfection. It's built through risk. And the risk doesn't have to be large, just intentional. There's a difference between being alone and being self-protective. One is circumstance. The other is strategy. If loneliness follows you into crowded rooms repeatedly, it's worth asking, am I unseen, or am I partially hidden? That question isn't accusation. It's awareness. Because once you see the mechanism, you're no longer trapped inside it. You can still be observant, still be composed, still be strategic, but you can choose when to lower the shield. And that choice changes everything. Loneliness doesn't always mean there's something wrong with your social life. Sometimes it means your depth hasn't found matching depth yet. Sometimes it means your nervous system hasn't relaxed. And sometimes it means you're powerful in ways you haven't learned to share. The goal isn't to become louder or more performative. It's to become slightly more available, to let the real version of you enter the room just enough to be met. Not everyone will meet it, but someone will. And that's where loneliness begins to dissolve. Not through quantity of people, but through quality of presence. Now that you see the pattern, you get to decide how to use it. You can remain the quiet observer forever. There's strength there. Or you can experiment with visibility. There's a connection there. Neither's forced, but both are conscious. If this resonated, subscribe to Human First. The next video will explore why some people feel exhausted after social interaction, and what that really says about their nervous system. Until then, notice the room, notice yourself in it, and notice how much of you is actually showing.